What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Umar Nurmagomedov calls Merab Dvalishvili to delete social media post. After Merab Dvalishvili's win over Umar Nurmagomedov, the champion posted a picture on Instagram that Umar shared of himself with Dana White and Hunter Campbell when they finalized his title fight. The big difference was that the camp dropped his face over Umar's, and from the sounds of things, Nurmagomedov wasn't too happy. And before we continue, make sure to leave a like on the video to help support the channel. According to the champion, who spoke in an interview with Setanta Sports UFC, Umar Nurmagomedov called him and politely asked him to delete the picture. As a gesture of good faith, the machine deleted the post and said that he wouldn't mock Nurmagomedov anymore. That wasn't the only post the champion deleted this week, however. After an announcement that he and Peter Yan would be coaching the new season of Hype Reality, Russia's version of The Ultimate Fighter, the champion wound up deleting his post, leaving fans wondering what happened. It was then reportedly confirmed through Hype Reality that Dvalishvili pulled out at the last minute because he was getting hate from fans. However, so far, no other reports have emerged corroborating the reason for his withdrawal. MMA community reacts to Dana White's response. During the very first episode of his new podcast on Thursday, proud flat earther Bryce Mitchell made a series of highly controversial claims that landed him in hot water. While in the past, fighters like Nate Diaz and Matt Mitrione were hit with fines and even suspensions for violating the UFC's code of conduct, the UFC has since taken a more hands-off approach to comments made by their fighters, giving guys like Sean Strickland freedom to speak their minds. Given how controversial Mitchell's comments were, however, Dana White addressed the situation while speaking to media members hours later.
So before we get started here, let me get some fucking dumb out of the way first here. And I'm sure you guys heard what Bryce Mitchell said. I've heard a lot of dumb, ignorant in my day, but this one's probably the worst. That's the problem with the internet and social media. You provide a platform for a lot of dumb, ignorant people. We've obviously reached out to Bryce and let him know how we feel about it. We're beyond disgusted.
Does Bryce Mitchell face a punishment from the UFC for saying
That's what everybody wants to hear about punishments. Free speech. I don't have to love it. You don't have to love it. Well, that's the beautiful thing about this business. For all of you that hate Bryce Mitchell, you get to see him hopefully get his whooped on global television. You know where I am with free speech. We're disgusted by it. I think he's probably one of the dumbest, literally one of the dumbest human beings. Let's not forget that this is a guy who took a drill through his sack, then had to reverse it and put the drill back out of his. That's the level of stupid that we're talking about here. And I could probably go on for 10 minutes talking about how dumb Bryce Mitchell is. But guess what? Bryce Mitchell has a podcast.
I believe this was episode 1.
What a way to start. But that's the world that we live in now. Dumb people who are really stupid and really ignorant can have a voice. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to like it. And this is no different than things that I've said about Strickland, But I will say this, out of all the dumb, ignorant shit I've heard in my life, this has to be the dumbest and most ignorant. He's stupid. He's dumb. You can't fix dumb people. You know what I mean? When you have somebody that's really, really stupid, and that's who we're talking about here, what do? How do you talk sense to a dummy? You don't.
The MMA community then weighed in, with Ariel Helwani praising Dana. A swift, stern, and definitive response from Dana White, much appreciated. Others called for the UFC to punish Mitchell. Proper statement from Dana White, though it would be a failed response by UFC to do nothing but chastise Bryce Mitchell. The UFC does not have to be in business, let alone promote anyone who thinks and talks like that. Totally their prerogative. They cut ties with people for less. Another replied, Mitchell will remain on the UFC roster unless the sponsors start pulling out. That's the reality. ESPN hasn't even bothered to pick up the story as of now. It's interesting that if someone in TKO-owned WWE said this, they'd be released within the hour. The tolerance level, expectation of the two fan bases couldn't be any more different. Some fans were not pleased with Dana only criticizing Mitchell. Free speech does not mean speech without consequences, you baldy. Another agreed. This is nothing. If anything, this encourages this kind of speech because nothing comes of it. You can say whatever you want in the UFC, and that's why Bryce is talking like he is talking. This is why Strickland says the nonsense he says. Are we being suckers here? One fan pointed out that Dana was reading a prepared statement. Look at that script they made him read off of. Very interesting, they printed out a bunch of statistics for him to read. Another member of the MMA community wrote, rare for Dana to come out and address an issue before he is questioned on it, but this was the right move. Also, 0% chance anything positive comes out of Bryce making those comments, so it's insane he even considered saying them. A different fan noticed the same thing. This is the first time ever that I see Dana reading from a script that's not about the fight numbers. Jake Shields liked the fact that the UFC isn't punishing Bryce. Dana White stands with free speech. You don't need to agree with what Bryce says, but he has every right to say it. Sean Strickland reacted to the situation by writing, "Not defending Bryce, but for the last year we've been watching kids missing limbs being pulled out of rubble from Israeli bombs. We've been force-fed that Americans are to blame for these. The truth is complex and gray. Hostage, generations of hate on both sides. We can sit here for hours arguing about cause and who is right and wrong. Bryce is a product of being on the internet too much. Nothing more, nothing less. I've been at a Trump rally thinking, wow, this feels like a speech. It is brainwashing. Find an enemy, attack the enemy, rally the people around the enemy. There's a reason why he rallied millions of people to do evil acts. Hate and fear is the easiest way to get people to march in the direction you want. Bottom line, you don't fix hate with hate, in America or the world. Bryce is a product of the internet. Last night, a stat came out of Bryce Mitchell's social media accounts. Since this AM, Bryce Mitchell has lost 1.2 thousand plus followers on IG and gained 4.2k plus followers on X. Crazy to think more people started following him on X after making those comments. While Mitchell might not be getting punished, it'll be interesting to see if ESPN faces backlash the next time he's added to a card. Dricus du Plessis reaction to Alex Pereira cornering Sean Strickland. Heading into next weekend's big rematch between Dricus du Plessis and Sean Strickland, Extreme Couture coach Eric Nixick announced that Alex Pereira would be in Strickland's corner come fight night. On top of the fact that Poatan and DDP have taken shots at one another in the past, with Pereira teasing a drop back down to 185, the light heavyweight champion and Strickland have been training together for a while now. The way DDP sees things, it makes no difference whether Pereira is in Strickland's corner, given that the challenger doesn't speak Portuguese. During an interview with Shaq MMA this week, he weighed in on the situation. He was in the corner in the first fight too. I mean, they don't even speak the same language. It doesn't really make it much of a difference. Strickland could barely understand his own coach, who's also American. How is he going to understand Alex Pereira? Considering Islam Makhachev had talked about potentially making the jump up to 185 to fight du Plessis, Dana White was asked about a potential fight between he and DDP during a power slap press conference on Thursday.
He would move up to middleweight? Yeah, I don't know about that. Listen, if he wants to move up to 170, we can talk. Moving up to 185 is a whole nother level.
From the sounds of things, Dana isn't the only one who's skeptical of Makhachev making the jump up to 185. In an interview with Helen Yee, Sean Strickland poured cold water on the idea as well. "You're a little man, bro. You ain't gonna wrestle me, dog. Go back to Dagestan, bro. Calm down." With Makhachev having no desire to fight either Belal Muhammad or Shavkat Rakhmonov, there's no telling what his path to a second championship looks like. Alex Pereira interested in boxing Oleksandr Usyk. Amid what has been an impressive reign at light heavyweight, Alex Pereira is now the latest fighter to express an interest in competing in boxing. Ahead of his upcoming fight with Magomed Ankalaev, the former two-division Glory kickboxing champ spoke through his translator/coach Plinio Cruz during an appearance on the Jackson podcast, saying that he's interested in boxing against Oleksandr Usyk.
That's something that he really wants, but he's on a contract to UFC. We know McGregor did it. Don't know how he would, but it's something that he really like to do.
Yeah, who would be somebody that be a big fight for him in boxing right now?
He's the champ. He would like to fight the champ. So Oleksandr Usyk is the fight that he wants. He feel that he could do really good. Like people talk about boxing, but boxing is one of his strongest parts. And yeah, he's supposed to fight. He's the champ. He want to fight the champ. So he'll fight Oleksandr Usyk. He think he could go head to head with him. He think he's up there. Me personally, I put him already to spar some world-class top 10 heavyweight boxers. Guys with names, real good names, not that I'm not gonna mention, but he did really good, bro. So I think he could do good. Wow. I believe in him.
While Usyk is a heavyweight boxer, he notably weighed in at just 223.5 pounds for his fight with Tyson Fury, meaning he and Pereira likely walk around at about the same weight when Poatan isn't in camp. Unfortunately for fight fans, there's pretty much no way that a fight between the two happens, given the fact that the UFC doesn't cross-promote, and Dana White has not shown any interest in letting any UFC fighters compete against boxers since the McGregor-Mayweather fight. Dana White shuts down fighter from the UFC. Since hitting free agency, Muhammad Mokaev has had his sights set on returning to the UFC. After a number of backstage incidents leading up to his fight with Manel Kape, the UFC decided to let Mokaev hit free agency in the wake of that scrap, despite the fact that he was well on his way to competing for a title. Since picking up a win under the Brave CF banner in December, Mokaev has held out hope that he'll get a call from the UFC again. During an appearance on John Bernard Kairiz's podcast, Mokaev said that he's learned a lot, and he hopes that he can return to the octagon.
Do you plan on coming back to the UFC in 2025?
If Uncle Dana calls me, I'm ready.
What do you think your path back is to UFC and getting that call?
I think they just want to see my behavior was how I'm gonna do. Like I didn't have any beef since I left UFC. I learned the lesson, I would say. That's the main thing they wanted to see probably.
Although Moicano pulled up to the Power Slap event in Saudi Arabia, Dana said after the fact he didn't see him and the two did not talk. He also made it pretty clear that the UFC has little interest in bringing Moicano back.
Yeah, no, I didn't see him. I didn't see him or talk to him. Yeah, listen, I thought I made that pretty clear. Sean, Hunter, and Mick did not like working with him, and they did not want to re-sign him. He's a free agent. I mean, he could be a world champion somewhere else, and maybe they'll like him better than Sean, Mick, and Hunter do.
So far, no word yet on when Moicano will be back in action again after his win under the Brave banner late last year. But if the UFC is serious about not bringing him back, then Moicano may wind up with the PFL after all. Renato Moicano talks about going to Dagestan. After getting submitted during his short-notice lightweight title fight against Islam Makhachev, Renato Moicano is motivated to get better and make another run at UFC Gold. During the latest episode of he and Gilbert Burns' Show Me the Money podcast, Money Moicano explained what's next for him, throwing out the idea of traveling to refine different aspects of his game with different teams. When Gilbert Burns suggested Moicano go to Dagestan, their co-host jumped in, echoing a quote from Islam Makhachev where he told Daniel Cormier to send his kids to learn to wrestle in Dagestan for 2 to 3 years and to forget about them.
I need to work on this guillotine, brother. I need to work on this get up. I need to work. I'm thinking I have to go to some other places to train, like Brazil, train a lot of jiu-jitsu, or go to some place to just wrestling. I need to.
Dagestan.
No, I'm not going to Dagestan.
2 3 years.
2 3 years.
2 3 years. Don't
2 3
call
years in Dagestan.
You don't call
brother.
anyone after 6 months.
Brother, 3 years in Dagestan. I'm 45 years old.
Despite a first-round loss, Moicano did not suffer any major injuries or anything like that, and was only handed a 7-day mandatory medical suspension, meaning he can get back in the octagon whenever he wants. From the sounds of things, however, he wants to take some time to work on some things before jumping back into the octagon. Michael Venom Page talks about discovering Israel Adesanya. Before making the transition to MMA, Michael Page was building up a crazy highlight reel in kickboxing and in karate. During that time, he stumbled across a clip of Israel Adesanya knocking out one of his opponents with a front leg head kick in kickboxing. Little did he know that years later, Adesanya would sign with the UFC, taking the fight game by storm and going on to become one of the greatest champions in the history of the sport. Ahead of this weekend's card in Saudi Arabia, where Izzy will fight Nasruddin Imavov and Page will fight Nurmagomedov, the two strikers sat down together in a video for Adesanya's YouTube channel, where MVP reflected on the first time he came across highlights from the last Stylebender online.
It's weird because I seen a clip of you before you was in the UFC, but obviously you don't put it together. I just see, and that's an unfortunate thing about, I guess, social media and stuff nowadays. It's just like crazy clip and then you kind of keep going.
Yeah.
It's only later on that I realized, I was like, oh, that's the same. Okay. Because you guys were just doing a crazy back and forth, but you was like styling, and then you just went, oh, bam, front leg.
Oh yeah.
Guy was sleeping. I was like, that was nice. So obviously that's the first time I kind of seen you without you really being Adesanya, you know, the style bender yet.
Despite the fact that a fight between the two strikers would probably be electrifying, after fighting Shara Bullet this weekend, MVP is going to make the drop back down to 170. Conor McGregor tweeted this morning sending a prayer to Bryce Mitchell. He wrote, "Saying a prayer for my God-fearing brother Bryce Mitchell tonight, who I know is a good man. Let this be acknowledgement, confirmation of the rise in anti-Semitic commentary, as well as all sorts of other phobic commentary that spreads feverishly and instantly from across the World Wide Web, where we as curious beings are brainwashed into all sorts of thinking for what? For one reason and one reason only, human division. We say no. All nations and their people deserve freedom. Humans under God deserve peace and freedom, and I, like Jesus did for us, would give my heart, body, and soul for it. From Palestine to Jerusalem, Israel to Ukraine, Germany to Africa, Russia to Ireland to England to America to Iran, Egypt, Sweden, freedom, peace in the world, because these robots, we are human, humans under God for the win. God said don't harm his children, so now never no more. Please God, earth, let's go, we have got this, peace from the champ. Conor then followed it up by one-upping Bryce and tweeting at Habib in a very R-rated rant, and he dropped the N-word twice. Conor wrote saying, "Show your wife, show your kids. Cousin, show us you and your cousin's kids together, because we have kids here in Ireland that want to smoke them in competition. Are they competing, or what are you saying? Ireland versus Dagestan. Where's your offspring? We can't wait to see them. The best of Dagestan offspring? Dagestan, what do we think? Is this true? Who's next? Cause Fatso with the coach whistle won't fight. Who designated this fat as master father? Certainly not his own father, and they all know it in Dagestan. Dagestan think you are lips for retiring. Real Dagestan is forever. You are laughed at behind your back in Dagestan. Lazy you are, they say. Fight me and make a $100 million and give it to the entire village of Dagestan. But you won't. Why? Fat, lazy, scared, lazy fatso. The MMA community went off on Conor, quickly responding to him, calling him all sorts of names and telling him to change his ways before it's too late. Here's what the community had to say. What a fall from grace, man. People looked up to this guy. Shaking my head. Conor, man, couldn't let Bryce have the spotlight for even 24 hours. Wasn't expecting double N-bombs from Conor this morning, but I'm here for it. Sounds like that boy needs a nap, lol. CTE and is not a good mix. Some were speculating that Conor could be hacked. I'm hoping your account got hacked and you didn't post this. Bro's gotta be hacked. You are a addict. You talk about fearing God and you talk disgustingly. You're pathetic enough to talk bad about women. It's not about your career, your championships, your athlete identity anymore. You are a disrespectful man who fell into the pit of alcohol and even if you fight Khabib 10 times, you cannot win once. This dude just doesn't understand he doesn't call the shots anymore. Man couldn't even get approval for a Jake Paul fight. He had his moment, and now it's gone, just like people's respect for him. Conor is wildin'. Dana won't say none about this though. Brothers saw Bryce Mitchell trending yesterday and said, it's my turn. You embarrassing alcoholic. This said the N-word, LMAO. You tapped like a and said it's only business. You're a disgrace to the Irish, even they hate you. Go snort you. You're not a fighter anymore. You're a oh boy, this one's gonna be removed quickly. You're a pathetic addicted alcoholic piece of the whole world will never forget when Khabib humiliated and you. Anthony Taylor responded to him writing, bro, get help. You lost the respect of everyone in the world, even your wife. Bro, you lost. Get over it. The better man won that day. Nobody wants to work with you. You're a high functioning addict.